Since the implementation of federalism, the federal government has handed over hundreds of drinking water projects to the provincial levels and disbursed billions every year in an effort to ensure that the public have access to safe drinking water. However, despite the lapse of over 5 years, more than half the population are still deprived of the same. To make matters worse, water sources are drying up as the direct consequence of climate change, which has compelled people to leave their ancestral homes and settle elsewhere. Good evening, I'm Sapsanamma. Let's begin with the headlines of the hour. CPN Maoist Centre's Central Committee meeting kicks off from today. Prime Minister and Party Chair Pushpakamal Dahal presents political report calling for party reform. More than half the country's population still lack access to safe drinking water. 8% deprived. State's investment of billions failed to produce significant results. Crisis in Niger deepens as European nations evacuate their nationals following warnings by neighboring Burkina Faso and Mali against any military intervention. And South Africa enters into the knockout stage of FIFA Women's World Cup for the first time with a thrilling 3-2 win over Italy. Sweden also booked the place in last 16 as Group G winners. The Central Committee meeting of Maoist Centre has begun in the capital from today. This comes after a gap of 13 months. Addressing the meeting, Prime Minister and Party Chair Pushpakamal Dahal said that a new approach for party's modus operandi was the need of the hour, adding that its existing ways were no longer relevant. Premier Dahal presented political and organizational report at the meeting today, but did not provide details to the leaders. The meeting also endorsed the proposed amendment to party's statute. Based on the amendments, the party has provisioned for a 409-membered Central Committee with 50% alternate Central Committee members. The 5-day Central Committee meeting is being attended by 385 Central Committee members, 198 alternative members, 100 office bearers from provincial committees and 75 from various commissions. As the meeting continues, participants will get to put forth their opinion on the report presented by the party leadership. The Central Committee meeting is also expected to finalize the allocation of responsibilities among leaders, announce a 3-month campaign to expand its institutions, along with discussions on the party's statute and general convention and the performance of the government. Earlier in the day, the Standing Committee meeting had endorsed the Central Committee meeting's agendas. The Standing Committee meeting had also halted the plans for a Facebook Live through Prime Minister and Party Chair Dahal's official Facebook page. Koshi Province's newly appointed Chief Minister Uddhav Thapa, who is also the Provincial Assembly Leader for Nepali Congress for the province, has taken the oath of office and secrecy this evening. He has also formed the government, appointing 3 ministers. Former Speaker Baburam Gautam, who had yesterday resigned from his post to lend support to Chief Minister Thapa in garnering majority at the Assembly, has been appointed Minister for Finance. Kamal Jabegu has been appointed the Minister for Physical Infrastructure and Pradeep Kumar Sunawar as the Minister for Drinking Water, Irrigation and Energy. Now, the main opposition, CPN has staged demonstrations citing government's disregard in controlling the spread of lumpy skin disease. The CPN Kathmandu Metropolis Committee and Akhil Nepal Kishan Mahasangh staged protests in the capital's Maitighar earlier today in a bid to draw the government's attention towards the issue. UML has demanded the government provide vaccines for free against lumpy skin disease and compensations to farmers that have been affected. The main opposition has accused the government of lacking seriousness in controlling the spread of the disease. Access to safe drinking water is one of the fundamental rights of the citizens. However, around 8% of the country's population are still deprived of it, while 66% are still having to make do with unsafe water. Despite government's investment of billions of rupees annually, drinking water projects still remain stranded. In places like Mallarani in Dharampani of Putan district, often road construction projects leave water sources buried, compelling the locals to walk for long distances to fetch water from the river. Since the implementation of federalism, the federal government has handed over to the provincial governments around 3,921 drinking water projects, 2,314 of which have yet to complete. Koshi Province government has managed to complete just 53 of the 611 drinking water projects so far. Madhesh Province has a similar story to tell. Based on the recent national census, 830,000 households in the region use tube well, 80% of which have dried up in recent time. The Madhya Pradesh province government has also struggled to complete beyond 25 drinking water projects of the 378 that it received from the federal government. Likewise, in Karnali province, 82% of its population have access to drinking water. However, just around 3% of them have access to safe drinking water. The provincial government has so far completed just around 65 drinking water projects out of 265. To make matters worse for the citizens across the country, climate change has invited prolonged drought while more water sources continue to dry up. The shortage of water has also affected agriculture and compelled people from the eastern hilly regions to migrate elsewhere. This year, the government has announced One House, One Tap campaign to raise the number of households with access to drinking water to 97%. The government has also allocated 1,310 million rupees to support all drinking water projects. Welcome back. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what's your take on business persons increasing the price of rice in the pretext of India's decision to stop rice export? Your options are A, high-handedness of business persons, B, lack of monitoring, and C, result of dependency on imports. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Let's move on to the international update. Hundreds of European nationals are being evacuated from Niger in the wake of a military coup that has plunged the West African nation into a political crisis and rattled the region. The evacuations come as military governments of Burkina Faso and Mali warned against any military intervention in neighboring Niger. France has begun the evacuation of hundreds of French and European citizens from Niger days after President Mohamed Bazoum was overthrown by members of his presidential guard. The first of 3 flights to evacuate French and European citizens from Niger lifted off yesterday evening. France, Italy and Spain had announced evacuations from Niger for their citizens and other European nationals. France's foreign ministry cited recent violence that targeted its embassy in Niamey, the capital, as one of the reasons for its decision to offer evacuation to several hundred of its citizens and other Europeans. France's foreign ministry cited recent violence that targeted its embassy in Niamey, the capital, as one of the reasons for its decision to offer evacuation. The initiative marks the first time that France staged a large-scale evacuation in its former colonies in the Sahel. The number of European nationals in Niger remains unclear, but there are around 70 Spaniards in the country and at least 600 French nationals. Meanwhile, Germany's foreign ministry said this week that it presumes fewer than 100 German citizens as currently in Niger, excluding those who are in the country as part of a Bundeswehr military mission. In Washington, the White House said the United States was not joining European allies in evacuating citizens for now, citing a lack of immediate danger. Former Ivory Coast President Henry Konan Bédié, part of an old guard of politicians who dominated politics in the West African nation for a generation, has died at the age of 89. Bédié served as Ivory Coast's second ever president after independence from France in 1960. He ruled from 1993 until an economic slump and allegations of corruption had led to his ouster in a military coup in 1999. He was long remembered and in some parts reviled for his role in promoting the issue of Ivorite or Ivorian identity, which fueled tensions between those who considered themselves natives in the south and east and the many foreign workers from neighboring countries long settled in the country's north. Bédié remained in politics until the end. At 86, he ran a losing race against longtime political rival President Alassane Ouattara in elections in 2020. The cause of Bédié's death was not immediately known. The son of a low-income farmer, Bédié was born on May 5, 1934 at Dadiekro, 300 kilometers east of the commercial capital, Abidjan. He excelled at school and was among 100 promising students picked in the early 1950s to study in France, where he gained a doctorate in economics at Poitiers University. In 1959, he joined the French diplomatic service and was posted as a counselor to the French embassy in Washington. When Ivory Coast won independence in 1960, Bédié was appointed as its ambassador there. 6 years later, aged 32, he was put in charge of the economy during a period of rapid growth buoyed by expansion of the coffee and cocoa sectors, which remain the country's main economic drivers. Tunisian President Kais Saied appointed Ahmed Haqqani as new Prime Minister, replacing Naila Bouden, who ended her duties, the Tunisian presidency said today. The appointment of Haqqani, who served as Human Resources Director at Tunisia's central bank, comes amid a deepening economic and social crisis in the country. In recent weeks, the president has repeatedly blamed officials and government, saying they must act to address problems and poor public services, including frequent water and electricity cuts. Meanwhile, there hasn't been a strong sentiment in reaction to the new appointment on the street, with some Tunisians expressing lack of interest in politics. Saied had appointed Bouden as Prime Minister about 2 years ago after he sacked Prime Minister Hichem Mechichi and took control of almost all powers in July 2021 and dissolved parliament in a move the opposition described as a coup. Thailand's Pheu Thai party will nominate real estate tycoon Srettha Thavisin for the next prime ministerial vote in a parliament, a party official said earlier today amid a prolonged political deadlock after a general election. Srettha previously served as the chief executive and president at luxury property developer San Siri. He left all his roles to run in 2023 Thai general election. Before the election, Srettha had been chosen by the Pheu Thai party as a possible candidate for the role alongside Paetongtarn Shinawatra. Srettha did not contest in any specific constituency and had publicly stated that his preference would be serving in an advisory role. A parliamentary vote for Prime Minister is due on Friday, and Pheu Thai said it is aiming to form a government without the Move Forward party. The populist Pheu Thai party finished narrowly behind the progressive Move Forward party in May 14 ballot. And moving on, Typhoon Kanoon tore down billboards and blew cars off their wheels today as it passed close to the country's southwestern Okinawa prefecture. All flights at Naha Airport in Okinawa's capital were cancelled by the bad weather, while local utility Okinawa Electric Power said about 210,000 households were experiencing power outages as of 1 p.m. Japan time. Some locations in Okinawa logged wind gusts of nearly 200 kilometers per hour on today morning and had more than 250 millimeters of rain in the past 24 hours. Floodwater triggered by heavy rain submerged an entire park in southern Beijing and left behind piles of debris as the water started receding this morning. Only a few trees and park signs protruding from deep floodwater were all that could be seen of Liulihe Wetland Park in Beijing's Fangshan district this afternoon. Residents crowded along a bridge on the park's outskirts to observe massive piles of garbage that had been carried by the floods. Beijing has stepped up rescue efforts after rains and floods brought by remnants of Typhoon Doksuri disrupted services and food supplies and claimed at least 11 lives, with 13 still missing amid historic rainfall in the northern capital. The Fangshan district government said it would deploy helicopters to drop off food, drinking water and emergency supplies to villages in mountainous areas that have been cut off. Meanwhile, flights resumed at Beijing's Daxing International Airport on Wednesday after days of torrential rains which caused disruptions. The airport said a total of 903 flights will be operated as scheduled on Wednesday alone. It also said it will pay attention to passengers' demands and provide services to make sure that passengers will have a pleasant and safe journey. South Korea's construction workers held a protest rally in front of the presidential office in Seoul today to demand better working conditions as the country raised the hot weather warning to its highest level for the first time in 4 years. Construction workers were seen lying down on the grounds of a construction site to cool down, a footage provided by the union showed. In the tourist district of Myeongdong, people were seen holding portable fans and eating ice creams, while sunblock and neck cooling devices were on display at shops. South Korea raised the heat warning level in its 4-tier system to the highest as of 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the first time since 2019. The scorching heat is estimated to have killed at least 22 people across the country as of Tuesday, more than triple the record of 7 during the same period last year, an official at the National Fire Agency has said. The Replace It campaign in Gaza is distributing bags made of cloth to encourage residents to avoid using plastic totes, which can end up in the sea or littering the streets. The scheme wants to raise awareness about alternatives to the rolls of free single-use bags that line the aisles of Gaza's produce markets. Customers can end up with dozens of them at the end of a single shopping trip. Azar Tanbora of the local Joint Services Council for Solid Waste Management, which oversees the project, said the Gaza Strip produced 200 tons of solid waste a day, 16% of which is plastic. The cloth bag carry the words "less waste, better environment" in Arabic and English. Plastic bags end up on the streets or on beaches where they find their way into the ocean. At one market in Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza, where the campaigners visited, plastic bags were strewn across the ground. Under the project funded by Japan International Cooperation Agency JICA, young Palestinian women and men tour the streets, educate passerby and store owners about the dangers of excessive use of plastic to the environment and offer them cloth bags to use instead. Israel's energy minister has said that more of the country's natural gas reserves should be earmarked in fact, for export amid renewed interest in offshore exploration and debate on whether the gas should be kept for domestic use. Huge gas deposits were discovered in the past 15 years off Israel's Mediterranean coast, but the government, in order to ensure the local market has enough in the future, set limits on how much can be sold abroad. The issue has been hotly debated for years and was reignited last month when Israel's budget director warned that the country risks exporting too much, endangering energy security. In 2022, energy companies in Israel produced 21.29 billion cubic meters of natural gas, with just 9.21 billion cubic meter of it exported. The exports went to Egypt and Jordan. Now, before wrapping up, here's a look at the top stories once again. CPN Maoist Centre's Central Committee meeting kicks off from today. Prime Minister and Party Chair Pushpa Kamal Dahal presents political report, calls from reform in the party's modus operandi. More than half the country's population still lack access to safe drinking water. 8% deprived. State's investment of billions fails to produce significant results. Crisis in Niger deepens as European nations evacuate their nationals, following warnings by neighboring Burkina Faso and Mali against any military intervention. And South Africa enters into the knockout stage of FIFA Women's World Cup for the first time with a thrilling 3-2 win over Italy. Sweden also book a place in the last 16 as Group G winners. That is all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.